Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of Dice and Design. And tonight again, I'm joined by Tyler from the channel Flame Zombie One. And the topic for tonight is how games try to teach you the rules, right? Some of them do a good job, some of them do not so good a job. So we'll talk about that, what would be the best practice and stuff like that. So Tyler, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing fine. I'm been busy lately with still with the move, trying to figure
Mhm.
stuff out. Yeah, it is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I know like this is kind of like your wheelhouse because like you work in a you're a technical writer, you do some editing stuff, and so I'm sure like you're gonna have a lot to say in the on the topic there, right? Hello, Phil.
Hey,
The trill.
yeah, I'll try not
Yes.
to run away with the topic, as it were, because yeah, I can get stuck in the weeds, and bad editing really makes me lose track of I stop thinking about the oh cool game thing I'm looking forward to, and go what the hell and you
Yeah.
just completely lost. But I think it's like that for even people that are not in the field, that working in the field. It's
Well, I think a
you.
lot of people like that don't work in the field. It's something that you get the feel of, you you're gonna hit your head against the rules. Like you try to read it and you
Mhm.
have to reread it again. And there's
Yeah,
just some books like that.
yeah.
That I don't know. Sometimes like they make a bad job at teaching you the rules.
You might not know how to fix it, but it's bad. There's a
Yeah.
better way to do it. It shouldn't be done the way it is. Yeah, so I suppose let's go through some pitfalls. I mean, the first time you open a book, there are typically two main ways to do it after your introduction, your thanks, and all the stuff that
Yeah.
people usually skip past, and that's either explaining the core mechanic or explaining how to make a character.
Yeah. This is the big one that we should address right away because like
Mhm.
that's always a debate.
Yeah.
Like, should you put the rules first or should you put like the character creation first? And they are like some people say like, oh, you should make a the character creation first because that's the first thing you're gonna do when you want to play the game. But I say, how do you like reading the character creation section? All those things you're gonna read means nothing if you don't have any clue of the basic mechanics. So I don't
Yeah.
know where you
I,
stand on that.
I
I'm a
am.
big like
Yeah.
I think you should tell me the rule first, at least the basic rules, right? You don't need to
Yeah.
tell me like every little detail, but give me like the core mechanic first.
I'm
What do you
totally
think?
in agreement, because lots of times it feels like you're making a character and you're making choices without the context of
Yeah,
what those choices mean. It's like, oh, here, you get a feat to purchase, or whatever. You get 1,000 starting gold to purchase whatever goods you like, and it's like, well, I don't you haven't explained the rules to me yet, so I don't know how to make a good decision here when I'm making my character. I might end up getting a feat that totally doesn't do what I think it does by
yeah,
the time I've read the rules. And you just end up with this obnoxious flipping back and forth of like, I'm building my character. Ooh, that sounds interesting. What does it do? Refer to something 200 pages later. Oh, okay, and then you're, and it just creates this sort of nonsense. Whereas if you have a table of contents, you should just have a section that here's where character creation starts. And so if you do want to skip straight to or towards character creation, well, you should have that as easy access to you. I
yeah,
think in the current times, there's no real excuse to not have a very good table of contents that clearly. Have you ever read a tabletop RPG, or any book for that matter, where you go, there's a combat section in the table of contents, and you go there and you expect to find all the combat, but then like the armor penalty for being prone is somewhere totally different than the combat section. It's just
yeah,
nonsensical, that sort of thing.
yeah. That happen all the time. Or like, well, I don't want to go too much ahead
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
myself here because that's something we're gonna talk about. But like
Yeah.
for the character creation section, like I often I like reading new system. I like reading new games. So I often like buy games almost blind in a way, right? I just like,
Mhm.
oh, it look cool. I'm gonna read a bit of, like,
Yeah.
so I can take your book, and I don't even know if it's like a D100 system or a D6 system, whatever. And you tell me you get a +1 in something, like, doesn't mean nothing, right? It's just like,
Mm,
is it
yeah.
+1 in the 1% or +1 on the D6, right?
Yeah. Or do you roll an
So
additional die? There's,
yeah,
so you need to,
yeah,
first of all, yeah. So I think we're in agreement there. First of all, you need to define your
mm,
variables. What is, and I think good games do this. They explain what the XDX terminal or XDY terminology of,
yeah,
1d6 means you roll 1d6 and then etc. But yeah, you need to have, what's a core mechanic, because otherwise I don't know if one is, kind of whatever, or if one is, oh wow, that makes my character significantly better at something, right?
hmm
I need the context to even make the choices to make my character first.
yeah. And I think if you're playing an OSR game, maybe it doesn't matter as much. A lot of people want to put the character creation first, also because of tradition. That's what how it used to be. And as you play with an OSR game, you basically already have a good clue of what the rule is going to be, right? So it
That's
doesn't
true.
matter as
Yeah.
much.
Mm.
I still think it's a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe and that's something another topic I want to talk about, like I could
Mm.
bring about. Unless you have other thing to say, like, is there like any other defense we can make about putting character creation first? Some people say like, oh, you learn a lot about the game by creating your first character.
I,
I don't agree.
mm,
You learn about maybe the game setting or what you can do in the game, but like, you don't learn how you can do it, right? You just like,
yeah,
just
no,
making a character doesn't tell
I
you much.
yeah, I find it creates some bitterness too, because many games have the trap options, especially, 3.5, Pathfinder, third edition, even AD&D, other, lots of systems have the like, I want to be good at archery. I'm gonna pick the feat that says it makes me good at archery. But then once you've dived into the mechanics, the thing that's explicitly stated to make you good at archery isn't good at making it's there's something you can do that's just better than that, just
Yep.
statistically. So it's like, oh well, if I just go based off, character creation blind, I'll end up creating something that's maybe not as good. Maybe the guy sitting next to me at the table has made a character that's better at archery and he's not even trying to do that, but it's because he understands the mechanics better.
Well, also, like, I guess if you is the first character you're making, if you're just like trying to learn the game and stuff like that, maybe it's not a character you expect to play. So I guess there's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
This
the
is a good point. This is a good point. Having a if you don't have a separate player's handbook and
Yep.
GM's handbook of players don't read past this point. So I guess that's something we actually don't have in our notes. Information that should be obfuscated from the players.
Yeah, I agree
So,
with that, to separate like the GM section and put it
mhm,
like later in the book.
mhm,
But the players still need to know the core rule, right?
mhm, mhm.
So that's like, I agree with that, that
Yeah.
you should like put character gen before
Yep.
GM stuff, but it doesn't excuse for not putting the core rule first.
It just means you should move the GM stuff later. And
Yep.
Hackmaster Fourth Edition even makes fun of this. There's like a whole oath you have to print out and then sign so that you don't break the sanctity of not telling your players stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned like after like card gen or
Mm.
rules, after like the basically the prologue section with like what is a role playing game. Do we still need that in every game? Should every game include that? What is a role playing game? And here's like what is a D4 and a D6 and a D8? How do you distinguish them?
I,
What are you gonna need to play the game? Or you're gonna need a paper and some and
yep.
pencil,
Yep.
right?
I
Like,
think in the modern era we can have. I I would honestly like more game designers to do. If you truly have no idea what a role playing game is, I'm not going to waste the paper here. Here's some great YouTube channels. Here's some, forums you could go to. Here's, I, go elsewhere first, then come back here. That way, bookshops, lol, but in the days of people going into bookshops, they flip open the book. The first page is, if you don't know what a role playing game is, check out these things first. And you go, oh, okay, you close that. And then you got to find out if you even want to buy the book in the first place.
But what if we're in a society where like all the internet is down, we don't have electricity anymore, you just find this book and you want to play the game, your game can survive. You want a
I
game to be
guess,
like apocalyptic proof, the
yeah.
survivor in the wasteland, find your game book and they say like, what is that? What is a role-playing game? Wow, we can do that.
Yeah, I suppose if that's your line, yeah, you should probably do that. But for me, and especially, I think this video is mostly going to find its audience in game designers that are designing smaller indie games. And if it's going to be an oddity, a real rarity, if some guy finds your game before they find Dungeons and Dragons, before they find, some other game. Yeah.
Different type of RPG needed.
Yeah. What's the old Knights of the Dinner Table joke? The offices and clerics that the dragons are playing at there. But yeah.
Hello, Bear. I hope you feel
hey. I think the main argument for providing that section is that mini games explain how to roleplay terribly. They have some pretty watered down, bad habits included. When you are explaining what a role-playing game is in your own game, you can give some of your own perspective on things, and maybe maybe even if somebody already does think they know how to role play, they just glance through it and go, wait a minute, this guy's saying something different than the Dungeons and Dragons core rulebook is saying. Maybe I should pay attention here. Maybe that informs me how the book is meant to be used.
That's where I was going with as well, because like I'm one, like I don't care if you don't include the alt roleplay section. If you do include it, I'm gonna fucking read it.
Yeah,
because I read every fucking thing in your book, right? But I'm gonna read it.
You're an outlier.
Yeah, and I find it very disappointing if you're just saying like, if you're just repeating what I've been said over and over again. Like, tell me what is role-playing game. What is a role-playing game for you? Tell me like your perspective, like, and tell me like how it's gonna inform, because like that's gonna inform how I should take your book, how I should use your book in a sense, right? If you just say like, oh, it's like playing pretend, remember, like we were cowboy and Indians playing as a kid, but with dice and rules, like everybody fucking said that. Tell me what role playing is to you. Tell me something I don't know, or just say nothing.
Yeah,
just like
give me some non-mechanical rules, right? I want some rules like. Don't ask out of character questions unless it's a mechanical question and it absolutely needs to be answered. Don't correct the GM on things in the middle of the session until, wait until after the game. Have a session 0, those sorts of things, right? Not the sort of like, oh, the editor is making me write this, so I'll jam it in here real quick, because that's how a lot of them read, is like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
and explaining what the dice are, right? I don't know, man. Just like
maybe it would be maybe we could move to the topic of designers' notes.
Wait, before that, I want to ask a question, like, because we're on the what is a role playing game and stuff like that, and I think this is even more linked. Should every game assume that it could be somebody's first role-playing game? Or is it okay if you write a game to say like, you know what, if you came to this little indie game that is kind of weird, I assume you know what a role-playing game is. I assume you probably played one before. I assume you're just gonna like randomly like sprout out of nowhere and pick up that game. Or if you do, it's because like a friend told you about it, and this friend can explain you what a role-playing game is, right? Like people like they're like,
maybe it's important then to write that section as a, why would you play this game instead of Dungeons and Dragons, instead of a D20 system, right? What do we do different than the guys you've probably heard of, right? Why are you coming to the mom and pop shop instead of the 7-Eleven,
like you bong say like spontaneous generation of RPG player. Like I think this can happen. You
Mhm.
can kind of like a group of young people say, you know what? I heard about this role playing game thing. We should try it out. They're gonna fucking try D&D, the current edition. If there's a group that just like start from nowhere and just like say, okay, I'm gonna be the GM. You guys gonna be the player. We're just gonna try that. We're just gonna pick up the book and read it. They're probably gonna look some video on YouTube too as well.
Mhm.
Critical Role. And I doubt like because like that's something that was when Lamentation of the Flame Princess got released quite a few years back, right? It was kind of controversial that they just like cut what they saw as superfluous. So there was no like what is a role playing section. They just like you open the page, you open the book, and like on page 2, well, now you're in character creation. So they started with that, but and people say like, well, you don't respect your, and say, well, we just want to cut the crap, right?
Mhm.
And they say like nobody's gonna start with their first game with Lamentation of the Flame Princess.
Yeah, I can see both sides of it because I don't think it's no one, but it's pretty close to no one. And like you said, you're gonna have. It's pretty likely that you're not gonna start GMing in a vacuum, right? You
Yeah,
probably have somebody that's bringing you into the hobby that can explain it to you. But again, maybe the person that's explaining it to you comes from Dungeons and Dragons, and they try to run every game like it's Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like Call of Cthulhu, you'll see people try to run it like it's modern D&D, and it's like this is not supposed to be a fantasy superheroes game,
yeah,
right? The tone's totally off. Yes, you know your audience, right?
yeah. I have
Um,
a section like Dice Tales have a section
yeah.
saying who the game is directed at. Yeah, I think that's a
Audience
good
and
idea.
tone, you know, if
Mm,
you go into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition expecting Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, you know, more sword and sorcery style stuff, you'll be very disappointed because it's like way higher fantasy, you know. If we're gonna get into the term of power creep, you know, a level 3 character in 5e could kick a level 10 character's ass in AD&D, you know. It's so there should be some note of tone, there should be some note of what to expect, you know, your just from the mechanics, you know, if you are using the mechanics as intended. I have so far at the beginning of my game, you know, this is made for, I am writing a setting for it. Even if you want to use it in your own setting, you should consider that the mechanics are made for a certain type of setting. If you're trying to use like a medieval fantasy setting that has a bunch of rules for hand-to-hand combat and use it for like modern warfare fire teams, you're gonna have to do a ton of work. Maybe that's your jam, but you know, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So
yeah. Or if you write something like this very deadly and somebody
mm,
want to you do like the superhero kind of
mm,
vibe, well, it's not gonna
yeah.
match, right?
And you know what
Yeah.
kind of superheroes, right? If you're going for more, you know, the boys and Invincible are popular right now, and those are kind of gritty. You know, the heroes are, at least many of them are much more vulnerable than we typically think. So maybe if you're making a supers game, it would be important to indicate, hey, this is not, you know, it's not exactly what you might be expecting. Yeah, the transparency is important, and that might be something to include on like a dust cover, like on the inside. If you did want to keep it out of the way of things, maybe, you know, not even dedicate a full page to it, just have the little blurb at the beginning of what's this game, who's it for.
Hmm. I think Bear's gonna join us in the end. Like
Oh,
we talk
sweet.
about like I guess like he's saying he was feeling a bit under the weather, but
Oh,
maybe he's better now.
oh,
Yeah, so
good
he
to
should be
hear.
here in a second. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's gonna be good
Um,
because also Bear is also somebody that's working on his game. There he is,
mhm.
and that has read a lot. How you doing, man? Are you feeling
I'm
better?
Hey,
sick, but you guys are
Oh yeah.
interesting, so I decided.
hey, that's a that's a
I had originally said no, I wouldn't come tonight, but I was going to watch and see how it was, and then you guys just got really interesting. And I'm like, you know
hey,
what?
that's good.
As long as my
Thank
camera's
you.
not on, you won't see how pale and death-like I look. So,
You'll always see how pale and
Yeah.
deathly I am.
but there
Yeah,
we
you,
are.
you do sound a bit sick. Like I'm
It's
not
been
gonna
a
lie.
day, man. It's been a
Uh,
day. I
Mm.
won't lie. But anyway, all right. Let's talk about gaming stuff. It's way more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since we're on the topic and we didn't move on yet, what do you think about the should every game assume that it could be somebody's first game, or we past that?
We're so past that.
We're so past
Like,
that.
listen, I'm writing 2 games right now, right? I've got Heroic
Yeah.
and Bastards coming, and both are going to have what is a role playing game, and it's going to have a little paragraph saying, I'm going to assume you do not live in a world where the internet no longer exists and are incapable of going and Googling something. If you are, what is our atrocious future like, and how is the apocalypse going? Because it makes no sense anymore. People who are looking to role play know what role playing is, and they should be, well, I I can't see them going, I don't know what this is. Thank God you wrote a book telling me it's like playing cowboys and Indians with rules. Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
That said, I like the idea of saying, what is a role playing game for me? And then what you were saying, Tyler, about describing, and I think you said this too, Max, describing what your view of a role playing game is. And I think that's better. And I also like
Yep.
the thing Tyler said of putting a little, how to be a good player section. Don't argue with the referee. Learn to let other people have a space in the conversation. Things like that. Like, those are really I would love to see more of that in modern gaming than the same old bullshit rehashed over and over again.
Yeah, because I find the sort of players manuals that the big publishers are coming out with, they don't tell you how to play the game effectively. They just give you, here's a new toy to play with, here's a new feat here, here's a new class option there. And it's like, well, what I would expect from a player's handbook is maybe some more, getting down into the nitty-gritty but it's unfortunately pretty clear that it's a cynical cash grab in most cases.
Some people still are under the impression that page count means something. Like people like you watch review of books online, right? And people still like, oh, you got a lot of value for your money. Like, it's $50 and you got like 800 page. Like, that doesn't say anything. If it's
I'll tell you
800
what,
page,
One
I'm
of
like,
the greatest role-playing games
Hmm?
ever made is Villains and Vigilantes.
I've heard good things
Yeah.
about it.
Go check the page count on that book.
What is
You
it?
know what I mean? Fantasy Games Unlimited were masters of doing games in under 100 pages. Full games.
I will tell you what a long page count means. It means your editors were not hard enough on you.
Or you padded the
Yep.
hell out of it.
You padded the hell out of it. Yeah, because if, as an editor, like, one of the jobs you don't think about, or at least most people don't think about, I didn't think about until I started working, was, hey, dude, these are 10 cents a page. Get this out of here. We can't afford to have a 900-page book. You're crazy.
You're paying 10 cents a page? You're a madman.
Yeah, well, I work in textbooks. So
Okay,
we have a
that's
nice
different. I was going to say, for
glossy.
gaming books, when someone tells me their writing rate's 5 cents a page, I'm like, well, good luck with that. I hope Watsy's
Yeah.
hiring.
Yeah.
It's just insane,
Yep.
I miss box sets. And the reason I miss box sets for games was because they used to put booklets in the box sets, not books. Right?
Mm.
So, like, I have Champions 4, I think it is, the box set, maybe 3. And I have the collected trade paperback they did of all the rules, and I stuck it in the box. But in the box are 3 books.
Yeah.
The book for making characters, the book for something else, and then a book of NPCs. I miss that.
Yeah, and it was nice.
I like that. Like Free League still does that for like Forbidden Lands. If you can buy the box set, and it's gonna be like, it's 2 books, one for the GM, one for the player, well, for everybody basically. But it does add to the cost.
Of course, it adds to the cost, but you're getting value for that cost, right? You're not getting some perfect bound piece of crap that's going to fall apart because of humidity.
And
I miss staples.
I would
miss
also
books.
add,
I miss the Stitch one, but
not to get onto a huge tangent, but I would just add shortly that tabletops are the most profitable they've ever been. Watsy's always talking, oh, more people are buying than ever before, and it's like, yet where are our big full color maps? Where are our multiple books for one purchase? Where's our big where's the quality with what we're buying here, right? Are you just is the page count just higher, or are we actually getting better stuff for the for the page count?
It's feast or famine, right? Like, Watsy makes a lot of money. Paizo probably make a good amount of money. Everybody else, it's like, well, here are some crumbs.
Well, but the yes and no, right? I mean, it's profit margins is what it comes down to. Okay, so
Yep.
for WotC, their profit margins are so nice that they could actually release something really good. Paizo's in the same boat; they can release something good. Chaosium can do something good, and they do occasionally. For the lesser guys, the profit margins are too slim, and that's why backer kit has become so important for role-playing game companies now.
Yeah.
But we're not all Kelsey Dion, and we're not all Matt Colville, and we're not going to make millions of dollars the way they do on their games. And that's just the reality we have to accept as designers. So we have to produce a quality product, and we have to network ourselves before we get to that backer where we have an audience of people that want to see us succeed and then are willing to put money into our name. And I mean, that's what Colville did. That's what Dion did. They just managed to get very large audiences. And as a result of that, they're sitting pretty and laughing right now. Okay.
Yep.
But you explain to me why Modiphius sells me a book or sells a book called Star Trek Lower Decks, and it's the source book for Lower Decks, but you got to go pay another $7 for a PDF of the character stats.
Yeah.
Makes
Price
no
of
sense.
PDF is out of control too.
Oh, whoa. But so what is a role-playing game? Hopefully not something that's going to rape my wallet.
Yeah.
yeah. There's something we can all
you
agree
know,
on. You know,
I hate to say it, but like if your PDF is $30, your PDF is free, man. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So and because we asked at the beginning, how do you feel about character creation before the rules? You think it's a sin? You think it's all right? Because you're writing Bastard Sword, right? And you're probably going to use a different dice mechanic. Do you think it's important to explain what the dice mechanic is, what edge is, what like all those things means, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, I got two answers for you. The first one is just I'm going to say it, and the second one is what I'm doing. Y'all got to stop with this "is it a sin" bullshit that people are putting on game design. It's ridiculous. Like, stop. Just stop.
enlighten me.
Let just people design their fucking game. Stop expecting them to do things the way you want them to do, and anybody will break. Like Max Liao, when he's like, "If you use the term action economy, I'm not buying your game." Okay, then don't buy my fucking game. You know. But there's so many people who have expressed so many particular tastes about what they want in a game, and then they make it like these absolute deal breakers for them. How the fuck did you guys discover any new games back in the 90s? You know, when people were doing it was fucking the Wild Wild West. So that's my answer for that. But for me, I introduced the system first as a quick overview. This is how it works. This is the basic mechanic. This is what you're doing. Now let's make a character. Okay, now let's get into combat. Now let's get into magic. Now let's get into this. Now let's get into that. But I give them the little teaser at the start of, like, almost if it was a starter set, right? Almost to the point where you could cut that section out, add an adventure and some pre-gens, and sell it as a starter set. That's it.
Yeah, and that's something actually quite, and like to say, like I say, is it a sin? Like it's a matter of speech, because like it's not a deal breaker for me.
You're an extremist.
We're talking about like what we would like to see done more, right? That's the whole idea. Getting started section actually is something I'd like to get done more. Like, just like give me like the skinnier rules, right? Don't go too much into the detail. Don't go into the exception. Don't go into the example. Just like, here's what you do, like a few page, right? Maybe if you can fit it on 5 page, that's great, right? So I can have an idea. Then you can go in character creation. Doesn't matter at that point, because I have an idea, right? I know what the basic mechanics are. And like you say, like what do you think, like Tyler, on that?
Yeah, I like. I wish more games would have those getting started things, because I think the biggest difficulty beyond everything else as a GM is finding people to play the games. You can find people to play 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons everywhere. There, you get them, you tell them your game concept, you tell them, they get excited for it. The moment you tell them it's not in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, they're like, oh, I don't know, and it's like, if you make the system easy, few pages you're in here, you don't need to, you're not playing a wizard. I don't need you to read through, 100 pages of magic sections, whatever, if you are playing a wizard, here's the down low. I understand how your, how your character works. I can, just tell me what you're trying to do and I'll make the rules happen. It'll be seamless. Then you can get more people to end up playing your game. That's another issue with these big page count games, is that they're a turnoff to the average player, the person that, you know, the backbone of your player base, the guy that sits down and, you know, plays some games with his friends. He might not be as invested in it as we are. But from a writing a game perspective, you need sections like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Even though it can create some redundancy, because like, you know, like, oh, okay, now at some point you like, at some point you're gonna repeat the rules again when you're in the core of the section and say, well, okay, this is the rule. Now we're gonna dive deep. We're gonna dive a little deeper into it and say like, well, it doesn't work. There's an exception, or it interact with this other rule. Here's an example, right? It doesn't matter to me if you repeat yourself a bit in that sense, if it's useful, right? And if you say the same thing both time, because sometimes in editing, our rules have been changed somewhere, not at the other place. That's a problem we see also.
As Arnman mentions here, yep, AD&D that did not update the rules from the play scenario and the actual finished book's rules. Yeah, that stuff happens all the time. Deleted references, we call them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mind if you repeat yourself. It's okay if you can repeat yourself without rewriting the entire rule, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's only in a really big, complicated game where you're going to lose track of stuff. If your game's simple or has a very straightforward mechanic, you don't need to repeat yourself too much. Or you can say a simple, as we said in section blah, subsection blah, this is where this rule would apply, you know, that type of thing. I mean, I agree with Max Leal on one thing. It's not a novel. I'm not reading it cover to cover. I'm reading it in spaces where I need to grab what I need.
Yes. And let me ramble about my field for a bit, because I think most people who are getting into this thing come from either a non-writer background, and so they only have what, we teach in, K through 12 public education, which is not technical writing. And these are technical documents. They are not meant to be read from cover to cover. They're reference documents. You're meant to go to whatever it is you need at the time, figure out, what do I need to solve the problem of, how do I resolve this situation? How do I resolve this? How do I make this character do this? But most people aren't taught that. Most people, I tell them I'm a technical writer, and they look at me kind of like, well, what's that do? And that's an important thing. If you write it like a novel, it's just going to be really confusing. People will start skipping over stuff, and then they'll go like, oh wait, that was important, I need to go back, and it'll just be frustrating.
Well, if it's a rule, it should be clearly labeled as a rule, and not buried in narrative text. But at the same time, your technical writing skills are lovely and all, but I've read game books written by technical writers, and they're boring as plywood. You need a happy medium between the two.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the thing about like you're not supposed to read those book from cover to cover. Like, I kind of disagree with that, because like, when is the first time you pick up a book? Like, you're not gonna read the book from cover to cover every time you read it. They are reference manual that you're gonna like go to the section you need, read what you need, and go back, skip back and forth. But the first time you pick up the book, like, if I need to skip to page 80 to start reading, so I can have like an idea of what you're talking about in page 10, right? For me, that's a problem, because I don't know if I go to page 80 and then I come across something that I don't know what it means. Did you explain it before in the page that I skipped? Or are you going to explain it later?
I can give you an active example of this that's fresh in my mind as I reread the Pathfinder 2nd edition book, preparing to review it. The rules for grappling are spread across 3 different blocks of text across 400 pages. It's the athletic skill is used for grappling. See what grappling is on page 201. Grappling takes an action, and it gives the grappled condition. See what the grappled condition does on page 450, and it's just like, okay, that's a mild annoyance as a PDF. When you're looking at this as a physical book, oh my God, is it annoying to have to flip? You know,
Well,
there's
so
so many.
the perfect example of this is Cyberpunk Red.
Oh yeah,
Cyberpunk Red is a fantastic PDF.
Yep.
It is a dog shit book because you have to flip back and forth so much between sections to get the picture of what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And that's not fun. That's just fucking frustrating, you know?
Yep.
But that's why I believe rules should be kept to a section called rules.
Yes.
And then in that section of rules, you put everything. You can reference it later, but just make sure there's this section called rules that has all your fucking mechanics in one place.
Yeah.
Call me crazy.
Yeah. And, you know, unifying mechanics from the game design perspective helps the writing part here too, right? If you've got a totally different mechanic, you know, AD&D is kind of guilty of this. You know, you're using percentiles for your skills and then D20 for attack resolution. And then, you know, you're kind of going, okay, so for this, I rolled that. And then for this, I rolled that. And you're flipping back and forth all over the book. And it wasn't a huge book, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, it's still a consideration to have in mind. If you can have a very clean, we roll a D100 for things. If you are lost at any point in time, you probably don't need to spend 10 minutes looking through the book in the middle of a session. Roll a D100 for something.
Yeah. That's something I'm a big proponent of. I think it's a bit outside of the scope of this conversation, but like, yeah, I think you should homogenize, like, especially like when you have like a different subsystem that are very close to one another, but like just slightly different. Just make them the same, right? It doesn't matter.
You know, it's
better to have something simpler than something like perfect. You know, like
something
perfect is the enemy of the good.
Something I consistently ask myself when I'm writing my game or when I'm writing, you know, anything really is, am I making this different just to be different, or is there actually an advantage in the way that it's different, right? And if it's different, because wouldn't it be interesting if sometimes the players get to pick up 2d10 instead of a d20? That's probably not a good enough reason to, you know, add 10 pages to flip through.
So a really fantastic thing I've had to deal with in my community is the ongoing 2d12 joke. Oh, they think it's hilarious. They always suggest do 2d12. 2d12 is a god-awful mechanic because base 10 math is much easier for people to grok and understand. Base 6 math is a little bit harder, and we're not ancient fucking Egyptians. So using your 2d12 is not intuitive, and as a result, people will have a harder time getting their brain around it. Now, D20 works because everybody can do in their head 5 times 5. They know it. They get the percentile ID, even if they don't realize they're doing it. They're doing it. When you get into the dice being quirky, which is why I hate games that have specialized dice, without an easy. Just I'm using the dice from my own box, and I can just, you know, like fucking what's their name, a Fantasy Flight game. We're just so guilty of this. You're creating another barrier of entry, a barrier of comfort, or a barrier of acceptance for players who want to come into this game. And I get it. Everybody's got this master mechanic in their head they've invented, and it's going to revolutionize gaming. But it's why I can't stand playing Savage Worlds. Why am I rolling 2 dice but only taking 1? That's dumb. If I'm rolling 2 dice, make both of them value, please. Same reason I don't like what they've done to Cortex. The original Cortex, you rolled all your dice and added them up. Great system. New Cortex, you roll 18 fucking dice, but only pick 2, and 1 represents this, and 1. Oh, God damn it, fuck off. I don't need that. I just need to play. Or, get out of the way, system.
What is it? Critical Role. I don't know what their publishing company is called, but their new game, Candela Obscura.
Yeah, they're using 2d12. Sorry, Dice Tales, my TARDIS is broken. I apologize.
They use they have like 1 die. I think one of the Star Wars RPGs does this as well, where 1 die is different, and you have to pay attention to that 1 die because it doesn't. If it rolls a 5, that's not just a 5. You can use that 5 and match it up to something on your character sheet.
That's the wild die.
Yeah, and it's just like, what was there a what I would like here is a designer's note, right? Because in most of these games with these wacky dice, they don't explain, like, you know, you go back to the original D&D, they had, you know, they explained, here's why we chose to use a D20 rather than normal dice, is because it has a linear curve. And then some people hate that the D20 has a linear curve.
Yep.
But they at least explain it to you, right? Why do they use 3d6 for rolling stats? Well, because it gives you a bell curve. But all these games that use these wacky dice now, they're just sort of like, this is the mechanic we're using. And then they move on as if it's matter of fact. And it's like, well, wait, how did you come to this conclusion?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of a. So yeah, go ahead.
No. My statement stands on its own. There's no design philosophy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like those designer note, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put them like aside, make them clear that that's what you're doing there. Like, so like if you don't want to, if you don't care, you can skip over it. But I'm a big fan of designer note. Like, tell me, especially like not for everything, like something that's just like self-explanatory. But like if there's a rule that is a bit quirky, a bit weird, stuff like that, tell me why you did it that way. Tell me why you make that choice and stuff like that. Because like then if I want to house rule, if I want like just tell me like, well, before you go ahead, just know like this has been done for this reason. Like I love that. I think that's something I wish more game would do.
Yeah. Like something that Dungeon of Crawl Classics does fantastically is they start by explaining, hey, the funnel is kind of a weird thing, but we really recommend you do it. We think it's one of the like hallmarks of the system. It's really cool. Try it out. If you decide you hate it, then never touch it again. Okay, but please, try it before you balk at it. And it's like, okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, well, I'll never ever play DCC because I have to buy special fucking dice for it.
Well, you don't. They have acknowledged that that's an issue, and they've gone, well, what you can do is you can replace, going from a D14 to a D16 with just roll a D20 with a -2 and bounds and whatnot, but.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Once you get to that point, you guys are doing surgery on the system to be able to play it properly, right?
Yeah, their solution to play it without the specialty dice is so fucking wonky that I'm not like I like the funnel. I think that's I think that's a good idea. I think that's the best thing that DCC brought. There's some cool thing. I often found like the execution was kind of lacking.
I can agree with that.
Using those funky dice. Never been a fan. The wild magic being wild, I kind of like.
I like it,
but the way it's done, like you have to fucking like every fucking spell got its own chart, right? Every time you fucking cast a spell, now you have to pause the game and go look at. Yeah, that's no.
I am also a fan of when the designer's notes likewise acknowledge shortcomings of the system because it tells me that the designer has considered the drawbacks. They haven't just thrown something together without play testing it and then put it in a book for you to give them money for. Whenever a designer says, you might have noticed a thing I noticed, then I go, oh, okay, maybe this system doesn't suck like I was thinking it does in my head because they're pointing out the flaw that I was pointing out.
And oftentimes in game design, there's like a question of a trade-off, right? So,
Yeah, that's fair to say. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to be reading a book and feel like the designer is talking down to me because he's on some fucking, ancient fucking school of mystery, black art that he's reduced into terminology and special symbol dice, and I have to be a druid of his order to understand what the fuck he's talking about. Where's my hat with stars and moons on it? Like it's ridiculous. Just give me a fucking game. That's why D6 will always be my all-time 100% consideration as the best goddamn game ever designed. Because it's straightforward, it's easy, you can teach them how to play it in 5 fucking minutes, and it's so robust and so you can modify it, you can add stuff, you can do so much with that system. It is the pinnacle of fucking game design for me. Might not be for you.
An aside, just a little consideration while we're on the topic of dice. D6 roll normally. You don't have to get a D4 and then question what you're supposed to do with it, because every time you get a new player in a D20 system and they're attacking with a dagger, they're like, well, isn't it just gonna slide on whatever? It's like, yes it is. Shh. So yeah, I would like more of that though. I would like more of
I like Dubong's comment. I rolled a yes. Some of these fucking games, I don't know. Like, sorry to bring up Star Trek because I always do. But if you remember the episode of Teach Reaction where Kirk teaches them how to play the game of Fizbin, It's like that's what some of these games feel like. It's like I'm playing fucking Fizbin. Like, what is this?
There's
Is it Tuesday? Is an even roll good on a Tuesday on an 8-sided die? What the fuck?
Using a magic 8-ball to determine
I'd
result
rather do that.
looks good.
I'd rather do that than the fucking Fantasy Flight Star Wars Edge of the Empire bullshit dice.
Yeah. But
Genesis
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Always like fun like this Genesis system. Like every time you make a roll, like you kind of dread it because like you have to pause the game and okay, now I have to fucking like interpret, like okay, oh you are like 2 success and 2 advantage, but one is
But
like
you've got a
10, like,
critical
and then-
failure, and
Yeah.
you were just trying to hide behind a bookshelf. Well, I guess the bookshelf bursts into flames, and hey, Hungar.
You've
Elongar.
you suddenly had a
Got it.
stroke and forgotten how to read.
Yeah, like seriously, you don't know who you are, and you've pooped yourself. Congratulations! What a heroic game.
Well, Fantasy Fly are often guilty of that, but like they're a toy, like they're like a board game company. They want
Yeah.
fucking sell you like stuff, right? They don't like
Yeah.
they're not happy selling you a
You
book.
know, and I'm sure they've got engineers that are going, hey, we've got these plastic injection molds that are going, we could rig something up here. We gotta we gotta use this factory floor space, or we're gonna be losing money.
Did you see their version of Warhammer Fantasy?
I have not actually.
No, I skipped
It's Timer Chit Mania. Like literally, I watched the GM that we were playing it one time, and my buddy was like, "Okay, I'm gonna play it." This French guy we played with Laurent, and he showed up with this box set, and then he started pulling out baggies of tokens, and then giving us X amount of tokens. I'm like, "What the fuck are we playing? Is this a role playing game or is this Candyland? What the fuck?" No.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they're really like they're you can see that their bread and butter is like it's board game, right? That's what they do, and board game with a lot of plastic, a lot of like cardboard, a lot of like fiddly bit, right?
Yeah.
That's what they do. Bear, you were on the old geek show. Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And you were talking about like
clearly
absolute beginner games, stuff like that. And at some point, what caught my attention was you talked a bit about the starter kit. And I know it was like John talking about that, but I want to bring the topic here. What do you think about starter? Because I never bought any starter kit, and I was saying that in the chat. I said I never bought any starter kit. Usually, if I'm interested in the game enough, I'm gonna go straight for the core book.
Yeah,
I'm gonna dive in. And John said, the old geek said, well, I like starter kits because like I'm bad at learning new system, and I find starter kit often do a better job. And we mentioned like, well, the getting started section that could be lifted and put in started, like basically became a starter kit. I think I would prefer it to be like in the book as a getting started section.
Well, I'm looking.
But you also like you also often talk about like Pathfinder starter kit, right?
Well, beginner box 1E.
Beginner box, yeah.
But 1E only. The rest of Pathfinder is dog shit, and I want nothing to do with it. And people get mad at me for saying things like they're absolute objective facts. No, everything I say is subjective based on me. And if you're too fucking up your own ass to realize when someone gives you their opinion, it's subjective by default, and you need them to tell you that it's subjective, maybe communicating with humans is not your best forte, and you should just play video games. But beside that anger and vitriol and venom that lives in my heart, Pathfinder Beginner Box 1E is a fantastic fucking product. If you have not picked it up, you need to pick it up. It tells you how to play. It tells you how to GM. And it does it in a really, really friendly, clear, color-coded, numbered, straightforward way. You could give that box to someone who's never role-played before, and by the time they're done running the introductory adventure, they're going to be just as good as someone who picked up D&D and started learning on their own.
You bring up a really good point here, actually, which is that people need to pay attention to authors. Just because it's Pathfinder just because it's Paizo does not mean it's the Pathfinder or Paizo that you fell in love with from the starter kit or from the first edition core rulebook. Paizo and Wizards of the Coast and Catalyst Game Labs and whoever else are companies that have dozens or hundreds of people working at them. Look at the authors, right? Because you very well may find, the people that wrote Occult Adventures for Pathfinder First Edition. Oh my god, it's unusable. It's borderline incomprehensibly written, and you'd go, what the hell? These are the same people that made. No, they are not the same people that made the rest of Pathfinder. It's a totally different team. So,
Well,
that's something
you're
to
not
consider.
wrong on that, because I feel bad for anybody that picked up Pathfinder Beginner Box and then did the transition after level 5 to full edition, first edition Pathfinder, because that's literally going, here's some candy. It's good. You like the candy, huh? It's candy's good. And now sledgehammer to your fucking face. How do you like that? Like,
Yeah, the Pathfinder First Edition core book is not written well.
No, and neither's the 2e, by the way. It has some great
Oh God,
ideas,
no,
but
no.
we're not gonna
As
get
I
into
already mentioned, second edition's written even worse somehow.
But to answer the question of why I think a starter box is a useful thing, because it's like it allows you to create a game, a session or two with some basic rules, some basic gear. Here's some dice, here's some maps, here's some character sheets, here's the basic rules laid out for you in a very clear and concise way. Now go ahead and play and see if you like it. And you and your friends drop $40 as opposed to $80. You have a good time, and you can decide if you want to keep going with that game or not. If you don't have a good time, well, then odds are you're not going to want to pick up the full fucking game, and maybe it's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about, Mr. Mbuevan, comes from a different school of thought, because you are really, really, really into game design and the philosophy of game design, the engineering of game design, and all that stuff that's surrounded around it. Hell, man, I had nothing but fun the other day when you and I just went back and forth on 1d20 versus 2d10 and really dug into it and tore it apart. There was a lot of fun. We were just talking privately on Discord. But if I had that conversation every day about every game, I'd want to eat a fucking bullet. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't need to think about games that deeply. And most people don't think about games that deeply at the end of the day. They just want to play a fucking game and get on. But here's the funny part. 90% of what you see as a starter set today was a fucking full role-playing game in the 80s and the 90s.
What do you think they cut?
What do I think what?
What do you think they cut? What is it in the full release of the game that wouldn't have been
No,
there,
I think what he means is like now that the modern games are much more bloated. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. What's in the bloat though? Do you?
Well, it's the way they write. Like, it's the economy of words is a lost fucking art. I think 90% of game writers these days are frustrated novelists and screenwriters, and they don't design games. They just want to write and tell you how awesome things are. So, like, if you go back to last Unicorn game, Star Trek game, they started off the book with, this is Star Trek, and there was that section. Okay, now here's the game. And it was great. Everybody else, it's like, okay, here's Cyberpunk, but also here's the game mechanics. Also, I want to tell you about Night City, but I'm going to tell you about corporations. But if you're playing a corporate character, here's some stuff you need to know. And by the way, you're a solo. We're going to fight now. By the way, did you know that Arasaka hires lots of solos? And it's just like, holy fuck. You give me a goddamn game. I want a little intro at the start, the rules section, character creation, the rules, and then the background you're going to be giving me to play in as just a taste, a little amuse-bouche, just to have that little bit at the end of, this is what the campaign world's going to be like, and then later release the full campaign world for me. I don't need you to give me an entire fucking Disney Plus Netflix series as the primary introduction to your game.
Yeah, and that's something I agree big time with. Like, I'm not a big fan of like I like when there's an implied setting, right? I don't like pure generic games. I think they often lack in flavor and stuff like that. So I like when there's an implied setting, but I don't need you to fucking tell me every fucking character in your setting who he is and what he is and whose grandfather is and what he eat for breakfast on Tuesday of before the whatever. Bagels. I don't fucking care. It's always is. Yeah. But in some games, because oftentimes also like those settings are not that good. I'm just gonna fucking ignore it anyway, right? I'm just gonna fucking like.
I love BRP. I love the basic role playing system. I don't think, as a modern fantasy system, not so much anymore. After trying to run it with people who've been playing 5e, and they were like, "This is boring. My character can't really do anything," and I'm like, "I get it," but I love it as a system. But you know what I don't love? Glorantha. What? I don't fucking like Glorantha at all, because it's just littered with magic. Everybody can cast spells. I'm like, this isn't for me. So if I want to pick up RuneQuest, the fantasy version of the game, I got to digest all this Glorantha bullshit at the same time. So maybe that's not for me. Maybe I want something different. So they made Magic World, which was great, and that was fun, and it was good, and what have you. But the point is that you have to figure out what you're doing. Are you releasing Tyler World, the role-playing game, which is all about Tyler's setting, and therefore the rules should be tied to the setting and emulate the shit from the setting? Or are you doing Mr. Boivin's fantastic generic fantasy game? You can do Conan, you can do Willow, you can do Lord of the Rings. Here are the rules. You know?
And that's something I actually explicitly wrote in the notes for this was, and it's something I struggle with because I do have my own setting in mind for the game, but I struggle with it's simultaneously a frustration when you're reading through a system and partway through the rules. This is just a basic writing thing that I feel like people writing games should know. If you're in the middle of explaining the rules and you haven't finished explaining the rules, don't have a giant 2-page sidebar of, Blorbo, shoots his gun and fucking explode, and you have this giant diatribe of some, totally out of context, fluff, where it's just like, dude, I was trying to hang on, where's the what? And you're just exacerbating the issue. Every cyberpunk themed game does this, whether it be actual cyberpunk, Shadowrun, they all have this issue. I don't know what it is about that genre where people want to write
Everybody
their
wants to be Bruce Sterling or they want to be Liam Gibson. So for me, here's the thing. Okay. I'm with you on this 100%. I would like you all, game designers listening to this right now, please stop putting fiction. Please. Every time I open up a game book and I suddenly have to read 4 pages of your narrative story, I want to rip those fucking pages out of the book because I don't give a shit about your novel. Write your novel separately, please. Now, if you're doing a setting book as a splat book, put all the goddamn lore and narrative shit you want in there. But if you're giving me a core rule book, don't tell me a story.
They always say, like, if I were to put like something on a T-shirt, that would be like, "Don't tell me a story, bro." Just like, I'm fucking tired of being told a story, right? Yeah, and that's not what I'm into role-playing game. I'm into role-playing game so we can make up a story together. I don't want you to tell me a story as a GM. I don't want you to tell me a story as a book, right?
Yeah.
I think like if you want to do like the 4-page would definitely be too long. I don't mind if you do like a new like when you every new chapter, maybe you have like a page of art, say chapter 10, whatever. On the other side, then there's some fluff like an in-world letter or something like that. I can just fucking skip it but don't make it more than 1 page and not a full page either.
Because what I struggle with is whether or not I want to release most of the setting info as a totally separate book.
Yeah.
If I want to have it as a section in the core book and just have like a table of contents thing to go to, and to what extent you have little bits of the setting throughout the book to explain. What I'm imagining right now is in places where the rules may be, looking kind of weird, you may be missing something, you're going, hang on, why is that the way it is? It's going, well, okay, because the default setting for the game, the intended setting for the game, there's this about the world, the way the world works, why is this fantasy game so focused on, unarmed martial arts? Well, because there is a nationwide curse that affects weapons and their use, and nobody really can use weapons effectively. So that's.
But again, are you selling me a game called Tyler World? Or
yes.
Are you selling me generic fantasy game 43? You're selling me Tyler World. Put all that fucking lore in there that you need to. As you go, look, these are what the elves are in Tyler World because of this. Blah.
Yeah.
And put that in the section on the fucking elves when I'm picking my species for my character. If you're giving me generic fantasy game 43, elves are like this normally in most games. Here are some variants of elves you could possibly have. Choose which one is right for you. Done.
Yeah, that's something I try to do as well. Like when I try to give my species and stuff, like my race, I have a little blurb. It's like I try to keep it under 180 character. I think that's the limit I put on myself. So it's very short. This is what they're about, right? Then we move on. And because I go for some like it's somewhat generic what I'm going for. I have like ideas stuff like that, but I want the GM to be able like to add his own thing. I'm gonna give you like the big line. You fill in like it's like the structure. You put your own flavor on it. You put your own spin on it. And I think also like the rules should be the thing that inform you a lot about like that's what I'm talking about implied setting, right? You can read the rules and well, okay, there's a gun, right? Because there's rules for firearms and stuff like that, so we know we're
Mhm.
about like this time period and stuff like that. I don't need to tell you, right? I don't need to tell you, well, it's about like 16, 17. No, you can just read and figure it out, like,
Mm.
and make
Well,
your own, and make your own assumption, and different people, different group can come with different assumption, and that's interesting as well.
yes.
No?
But you and I have done something really stupid, both of us, which is you named your game the way I should have named my game, and I
Yeah.
named my game the way you should have named your game. Like my game should be called Winter Dawn, and your game should be called Bastard Sword, because my game is going to be based around the Final Age setting that I've added to it, right? And
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. Where your game's not about a setting called Winter Dawn,
No.
So both of us are misleading our fucking purchasers.
Yeah,
That's
I told you, because of you, I'm gonna rename my name and my game. I just need
Mm.
to figure out the name.
Yeah.
Winter Dawn is like the working title for now,
Yeah.
but
That's.
You're welcome.
I think that segues us pretty nicely into using flavorful language within
yes,
your stuff because, yeah, there's the title obviously, and there's
that's part of the fluff as well. Like okay,
Mm.
fluff, like just fluff, keep it separate,
Yeah.
keep it short. Like I said, like you're telling us a rule. If you want like a setting book, make a setting book. I think a separate book is fair. It's fair. It's
Okay.
fun, right? It's fine. Uh, and yeah, keep the fluff away from the rules. Like don't fucking put it like and make it clear that it's fluff. Don't fucking like write in the same kind of like font, in the same kind of like.
Mm.
So I think we can all agree on that, right?
I think Phil has cracked part of the code here. If you want to monetize source books, then you could have a low-res description from an in-world observer shrouded in mystery, only to be revealed when your shit module book comes out
There you go.
and ruins all the
That's the
mystery.
spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things
That is
I've
fair.
decided for any setting I design is I'm taking the Harn World mentality, which is the setting is at year 1, and
Yeah.
they will never produce a product that goes to year 2.
Mm.
Everything I produce will just be a lateral expansion of year 1 across the setting, and then you can do whatever the fuck you want with the setting afterwards. What a crazy idea! But again,
Yeah.
I'm not a frustrated novelist trying to tell my magnum
Yeah.
opus.
Leave open ends. Here's a problem. I have no idea how your players are going to fix that problem, or even if they're going to fix that problem. There's just
here's
problems in the world.
here's a perfect example when I designed Final Age, which I'm not going to show my shit, but I did it.
Well, you
And
can.
one of the things in it is that at some point in the past, something really bad happened that destroyed civilization. Some people say it was this, some people say it was that, some people say it was this. We don't know, and we don't know how fucking long ago it was, but it was a real fucking long time ago that no one alive remembers it or the time before it. And I literally had people that were working on the project go, well, we should really decide what it is. I'm like, why should we decide what it is? There's no need to decide what it was. No, but it really helps to know for writing. No, it doesn't help to know for writing because you need a crutch at that point in time.
Hmm.
I'm giving you an open fucking playground and saying, be creative. You want it to be fucking aliens? Make it aliens. You want it to be demons that exploded out of the ground? Make it demons. You want to make it was a fucking nuclear war? Do that. Just you make your own goddamn decisions.
Yeah, and when you leave those open-ended bits, it becomes fun for the player characters to banter about, what do you think it was, instead of going, do I know why there's a giant hole in the ground in the middle? You're having to, engage in that. What do I know in character versus what do I know out of character? And, it just becomes more organic because, there's, I don't know why people don't think about it like we do in real life, think about it in real life. There's stuff that happened a long time ago that we know nothing about. We know very little about, the Toltec people or the Olmec people, or, there's a bunch of stuff that's just laying around and we go, those are some really big man-made structures. That's weird.
Yeah, well.
So yeah, leave open ends.
And now for thematic language, like people that try to write the book, like if the book was like a diegetic, like a part of the wall, like like using slang, and they're gonna tell you the rules, they're gonna fucking write those rules. Or if it's somebody from the world telling you telling you something about, like, Like you've seen that? I think like Star Trek Adventure does that. No, the Modifius Star Trek.
What do you mean?
They like the book is written as if it was a manual from the Federation. Isn't that the case? Or maybe I'm talking about some other Star Trek game. You would know.
I don't know. I
Oh,
I don't think it's written like that. No.
Shadowrun is written like this
Oh,
to the
maybe
point
I'm
that it
thinking
has
about something else.
Dick.
Shadowrun's written like this. It has to have it. It has a glossary in the back, so you can understand what the hell they're talking about. They use a bunch of Japanese, like they've invented a new speak, which is like a hybrid. It's a pigeon of Japanese and English, and
Yeah.
that they've got to explain all their terms in the back of the book. Otherwise, you're just going like, what in the hell? This is gibberish. This.
Yeah.
I hate that. I like don't make it harder to learn your rules than it's already is, right? It's just like
Mhm.
I understand this. We're talking about like frustrated writer.
Yeah.
That's the fucking case of it, right?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
it's
the fucking,
barriers to entry again.
yeah.
It's barriers to entry again. And this is the thing that pisses me off so much is that there's these writers are putting out games that just are barriers to entry. Well, you know what the fucking Kwisatz Haderach of that is? Cinnabar.
Know nothing about it.
Yeah.
A Cinnabar is this whatever McRaven or whatever. It's the worst role playing game ever written, but he's full hog tilt into it. Like he's in, and he writes it like you're in the universe, and he uses terms that are it's indigestible. It's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
And that's where you wind up. Is in like there's two sides to this. There's the D6 generic rule book, and there's that. Figure out which side of the spectrum you want to be on. Personally, I'm going to err towards the D6 side, where I can try and be a little bit less insane.
Yeah.
And even like without going full on like writing if the book is part of the world, like the example I would use for like something that is trying to be thematic, but it just make it more barrier to entries, like would be like Burning Wheel, like the using forte, like he says, like the like for instead of strength, right? Make no fucking sense. Why do you do that? Now you fucking use this like word and you use it wrong. You say it's pronounced forte, and you say it comes from French. From French, it'd be fort.
Yeah.
And it would be fort, it would be far, and it would be far, it would be force, right? It's like it make no fucking sense. He make like fucking 5 mistakes in his fucking pretentiousness, trying to be a pretentious fuck,
Yeah.
and all it does is confuse people, right? Just like, but or like calling the target number, calling them obstacle, and so like, well, you just call it target number. People know what it fucking is, right? People are.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes and no on that because it does get to a point where you don't want to sound like you're Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm telling you, I like literally have abused the source.com. I need to take it out for a nice dinner, because it's just the way it is. And it's hard because you don't want to sound like, if you're writing a fantasy game, you want to kind of make the terminology you use sound fantastic. If you're writing a sci-fi game, you want to make the terminology you use sound scientific. If you're writing a superhero game, you want the terminology you use to sound bombastic and heroic. And if you're writing a horror game, well, you want to use creepier terms. I'm okay with that. It's when you get to the legendary adventures thing where you start calling player characters avatars and I mean, like, he went off the rails on that, trying not to sound like D&D, and as a result he made a game that may be very good but people didn't get into because it was too off-putting.
Like I would say I'm okay with that if you try to make to get like thematic language for your mechanics that are kind of unique to your game, right? This is the place to put some flavor in it. Like if you use a dice pool system and you want to give another name to success, right? Like, now you're not looking for success, you're looking for triumph or whatever. Like it just something else to get in the way, because now every time you like, to use the example of obstacle is not like obstacle, you would think of an hindrance, stuff like that, like, but every time you say like, okay, that's your obstacle, and people ask you what's the obstacle, and you say it's your target number. Just fucking call it target number, right?
I was just about to say, what you'll find is that people at the tables just call it what they're familiar with anyways, right? And it's a big struggle to get people to change to new terminology with the very basics of something, right? Attributes are attributes, right? Everyone, okay, D&D might be the first that popularized the idea of, oh, you have strength context, but yeah, strength is it's a physical thing in the world. I don't need you to call it something different just because, oh, well, I don't want to be too much like D&D.
And
That's,
I don't mind if you call it different,
yeah.
if you make it something different,
If it's
right?
mechanically different, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if your dexterity is instead agility, and it's not just how accurate you are with your movements, but it's how quick you are with your movements, and you have dexterity as a separate thing that has more of the accuracy component in it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
Actually, I have like a skill group called dexterity,
Mhm.
and agility is my body control kind of like
Yeah.
yeah.
And like skills
I
are
get-
skills,
I get annoyed by games that have dexterity and agility as stats. Like whenever I see that, I just go, ugh. Like I don't know why, but in my head, I'm just like, ugh, I don't like your game
Well,
anymore.
Yeah, well, dexterity is not a stat for me. It's a skill group. It's a skill group, but it's for because dexterity it's always been a bad name,
trained.
to be honest.
Yeah.
It's already a bad name for game for
Yeah.
the stat that it represent, because dexterity is manual, like it's the fine motor skill. So the dexterity skill group, like it's for like lock picking and sleight of hand and stuff like that. Like, it's like a
you
little
train
thing
dexterity. It's not
Yeah.
something that's really natural. There can be hindrances to it, but
Yeah.
that's but
like,
likewise,
we're in the
no.
weeds on this.
yeah.
Yeah, we're in the weed
We're
on that.
fully hair splitting at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
But what I'm saying is like the big part of like there's some like common language that we have in role playing game for some common thing. If you want to change it, you better have a damn good reason, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
And like I said, if you
Mr.
want to put like
Max
some
is
flavor
coming
with
to your
it-
house and slapping you
exactly. I'm gonna slap you about it. What the fuck you doing?
But there can be some argument for changing things like font, using different. Morkborg is probably famous / infamous for this, right? That is either a love it or hate it for its stylistic choices. You could argue that game is all style and no substance. But you look at it, and that font draws a lot of people to the game. It tells people, whoa, what the hell's going on here? It might tell you something about the world, and everyone sort of knows the cyberpunk font. Everybody sort of knows, you're not going to use a sans serif font for a fantasy game. It just doesn't look right. It looks too modern. At the same time, you don't want to use, as dry as we're sort of explaining it, you don't want to use Times New Roman 12-point font, black and white for your book. That would be really easy to read through, but it would be boring as shit.
What about Papyrus?
Yeah, that'd be a good one. No.
Sherlock. Yeah, make it completely illegible.
Baskerville Old Face,
Well, that's what Morkborg did. They made their game basically like almost like illegible. No,
Yeah.
And
that's what turns me off about it, and that's what makes me not want to even bother with it.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yeah, I finally caved in and bought it. I didn't receive it yet, so I'll give you. If you see me blind next week, that's why.
God, his face is still yellow. It's the ink is rubbed off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a consideration though, especially with if you're. I've read some games that have very sparing usage of images or very few of them, and I think that can kind of murder a game in some way, right? If your game has a default font setting and few to no images that don't really tell you anything about the game, that's kind of I mean, bookstore, but also on an online store, you'll see some random pages, be able to flip through it. At the end of the day, a lot of people are buying your book for a coffee table art book. I'm guilty of this as well. I have at least if I don't like the game, there'll be some cool art in it. But also, those graphics can tell you, they can be big indicators of, I know what section I am at in the book at this point. If you have some random dude just standing around, that's not super helpful. But you have a big, banner of combat going on. I know, oh, I'm in the combat section. I don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I bought the Dragon Age hardcover because the art was beautiful.
Mm.
I'm never going to play that fucking game.
Yeah.
But the art was gorgeous. I had to have it. I'm like, this is something I can look at. I can sit down on a rainy day with a cup of coffee and flip through it,
Yeah.
Naturally, of course, I get arsed off because every Green Ronin book has the exact same goddamn page layout design philosophy, regardless if it's a superhero game, a fantasy game, or a sci-fi game. Write the rules so you don't have to
was saying earlier, write the rules so you don't have to diagram a sentence to figure out what is going on. I think that's like some people probably don't fucking reread like what they write, because sometimes like you read this rule and you literally have to take your time, piecemeal out. Okay, what is this trying to say in that fucking rule? Like there's fucking like 3 clause, like 2 double negative, and yeah, that's a big
sanity.
advice.
Sanity check your book, right? Regardless of what you're reading. Have somebody who has never read a tabletop RPG, has no idea what this is. Have them read a paragraph, and if that paragraph they go like, I kind of understand what's going on here. That's a really good sign.
That means I have to meet people who don't role play.
Send it to your mom or something. I don't know.
No, my mother's dead, so that would be weird.
Well,
then we got the Ouija board for resolution.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But do that. If you can't do it, send it to someone that at least isn't in the know about what you're writing.
Also, sending it to your mom. Come on, man. She's gonna be like, "You're such a good little writer."
Hopefully your mom, has whipped you into shape a little bit more. But yeah.
My mom would just laugh at me. I'm not reading this shit. And be like, okay, thanks, mom.
But the idea is, other eyes on it are going to point out things like, oh, you wrote, he saw the man on the hill with the telescope. Well, was the guy using a telescope? Was the man on the hill have the telescope? What, this is ambiguous. I can't tell what's going on here. Yeah.
Well, if you were playing Morkborg, that was the exact goal, apparently, of the writing style.
And then you have your developer side program of, if you are confused, then that's the goal of our beautiful game here. It has made you think, and then you put it in a modern art museum. But
yeah,
game should be functional.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to restate the subject and the object and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because keep it clear, right? It's just like might be a little more repetition, but it's worth it sometime.
Instead of using he, she, they, then say the paladin, the fighter can, make it very clear as to what you're talking about.
That's fair.
Yeah, and avoid fucking run-off sentence for fuck's sake.
Yeah, that's highlight whenever you're editing something. If you delete a passage, highlight what you've just deleted and go back to it and read the paragraph now that you've deleted that section and make sure it makes sense, because you may have deleted something that is important for it to make sense. There are so many books that I have gone, to see how this mechanic works, refer to page 62, and you go to page 62 and there is nothing at all, and you're just like, they must have deleted something in the editing process and forgotten to go back. And it's just like, so is there not a rule for this? I guess there's just not a rule for this then. Like it's
no rule. Yeah. Thanks for your money, sucker.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, as much fun as this has been, my voice is getting worse, so I'm gonna bow out and give my voice some rest. But
thank you for joining us.
Fun.
Well, thank you for joining us, man.
We'll do it again another time, but hopefully when I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
Well,
by the way, Monsieur Boivin, I use the word thew in Bastard Sword for strength. Thew. 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 Oh, yeah.
That's going to be easy.
Taste it. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys. Have a good night, and thanks everybody in the chat for hanging out with us. Bye.
Yeah. See you, man.
Armin was saying earlier, and rules need more example and should use the complicated situation in the example that show how to do while clarifying any outlier.
Yes, because nobody wants to go onto 80 different forums and look at your errata and look at the different, oh, this is errata number 1, but 5 years later they made errata number 2 over here. Yes, exactly. If the errata is as big as a chapter in the book, you need an editor.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
man. Yeah.
yes,
Big time. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that's what you should in your you should have a play test. You should have a play test where the players can figure out what's confusing. They figure out what's confusing and go, hey, this needs clarification here. Then when you, the GM, presumably also the designer who's running the game, can go, the ruling I made on the spot, well, I'm also the game designer. I'm just going to write down whatever my ruling was and then go, here's an unclear section. We need to explain that's start the drinking game. We've got 10, 15 minutes left. You get down a few shots and that's
Filler, you're saying like, oh, Morg Borg, like that's when Justin is here and talk about it. And Justin is there like defending his game. Yeah. Yeah. But example of good, obviously. Like but like the question I wanted to ask, like, is there like something like sometimes such a thing as too much example? Because sometimes you read a rule. Sometimes I always feel like some people like give me example of something like very fucking simple, right? Like oh, you roll a d6 and then you read the face on top to and then there's an example of it. You're just like, yeah, that's like sorry.
What's his name of Worlds Without Number and Stars Without Number? He writes kind of like
Crawford.
that, where it's like,
yep,
yes, Kevin Crawford, yeah, where it's just like, yep, thanks, I got the, yep, got it. I kind of understood that part. I've played Monopoly before.
Something like examples are good, especially when there's a rules that are a bit complex, many things that interact together and stuff like that. And give me like an example of the complex case.
But I don't need to know that moving is when a character picks up their leg and puts it down elsewhere and then does the same with their rear leg. Thus, they are now in a new location, a couple of feet away. Like, I don't need that. Don't talk down to me. But when
or even without going like all like talk down like that, you said, oh, a character can move 30 feet in a round, right? Whatever, and then like and then like you give me an example like, oh, John could like move 30 feet in a round and he decided to move 20 feet so he can, or you want to move 40 feet so but he can only move 30 and the next 10 will be moved. Like, you told me he can move 30 feet around. I fucking got it. I don't need an example of that. Like, I understand that if you want to move 40 feet, it's gonna take him 2 rounds, right? At some point, like, don't take me for a fucking imbecile either.
Yeah. And also, leave room for the players to figure out, what exactly it is. Don't optimize the fun out of the game. Don't give every single example of how, I think a lot of modern video games are doing this as well, where they're like, this is exactly the situation you're supposed to use this in. Here's everything you can do with the grappling hook. And it's like, well, part of the fun is finding the creative ways to use your grappling hook. It's sometimes I don't need, in an equipment section, I don't need a paragraph on what a grappling hook is. I can just need it's a hook with a rope attached to the end of it. And then, all right, I got it.
Feels they are going to think those should be a result of playtesting. I think that's a good, I think those can be the best example. And you say like, oh, I don't need to explain to me what is a grappling hook is. There's a famous example in Zweihander. Zweihander is a fucking example of it's a 900-page book, and regardless of like who the creator is, which is kind of an asset, but like the book, if the game would have been much better if it had half the page count. There's so much fucking useless information. There's so much fluff where it doesn't belong, and like you read like there's a section about a campfire, and then there's a fluff like detail explaining you what a campfire is. Or like I know what a fucking campfire is. I know what you don't need to tell me like every fucking thing. Like you don't need to include a dictionary in your fucking game, right?
I think sometimes those are included almost for like occasionally, I remember one example of a terrible player. There's an item in Pathfinder that's called a campfire bead, and it's just a little it's a little ceramic bead, and you throw it down and it makes a campfire and it burns as a campfire does. And this guy like trying to go well, what kind of wood are we using? Because are we using pitch? How hot is the fire of the campfire? And it's like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like it's like, is this, can we get it up to like steel melting temperatures? Dude, just
Probably not.
we don't need all of this. This is not important.
Certainly not that steel melting. You could.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you don't have a thermometer. A thermometer, I don't think has been invented in the world. Your character wouldn't even be talking like this. Like what?
Even with jet fuel, you cannot bring it to steel melting temperature.
No comment.
That's a joke. But yeah. So at some point, like that's also part of like keeping the game manageable and stuff like that. If you over explain everything, and sometimes like you don't need to tell me what a torch is. But maybe you need to tell me something about what a torch does in your game, right? It doesn't
maybe
send light to 20 feet radius, burn for an hour. That's it. I don't necessarily need the fluff about
And it might be nice to explain because a lot of games have torches and lanterns in the game, and they don't explain why you might choose one over the other. And it's like, well, a lantern burning oil isn't going to produce a ton of smoke, but you are going to have oil to deal with. So maybe that can be achieved in 2 sentences. It doesn't need to be a big blurb. So yeah.
So that's another like a big thing I would say to avoid, like over explaining stuff. What else?
We kind of touched on this earlier from Dice Tales, including a sample setting and bestiary boosts page count with value. Yeah, where those can be things in the back in an appendix where and also, this does double duty of you give your players more value, and it becomes sort of an advertisement of, do you like the few stat blocks we included in here? Well, we've got a separate bestiary you can buy for $20 that, Sergeant Dan, that you might like. And so, yeah, I think those are good.
You see, like the setting section, I don't mind if you put that in the beginning of the book and the bestiary at the end.
Yeah,
but don't put rules in your settings section so I can skip it. If I'm not interested in the setting, I can just like skip it and then I'm not missing a rule there. Keep it them separate.
Don't worry about your setting. I hate whenever you have like the settings talking about bugbears and just randomly not in the bestiary section is a stat block for a bugbear, but you also have a separate bestiary setting. So you're like, what? This feels like it should have gone here, not.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about, like sidebar. Know how to use your sidebar and use them for the same thing. Like if you want to use a sidebar for designer note, or for fluff or stuff like that, you can have like more than one use for them. But use them, like don't put rules in the sidebar, right? Because sidebar should be stuff that can be skipped.
As a technical writing rule,
because it's a sidebar.
Expect that 3/4 of your readers are going to ignore what's in the sidebar. So if you put something important in there, it's gonna get ignored, right, by the and then you'll have to answer. You'll have to answer angry emails that are going, "Why didn't you explain how this roll?" And it's like, "Well, I did. It's in the sidebar." It's like, why the hell did you put it there? This doesn't make any sense.
That's something like the big gripe I had with The Witcher. They would put fucking rules in the sidebar.
Yeah.
And sometimes the sidebar was just like some fluff, or just like some random stuff. Like a lot of times it was fluff, like some like in-lore stuff. Like I'm not gonna skip them.
Yeah.
And at some point, like it's a rule, right? It's
exactly
about like how to do something. Like, what are you for? Are you fucking idiot?
Yeah. It's like, have you never read a textbook in elementary school or something that has So.
Yeah, so sidebar, they can be good, but know what they're used for. That's a big thing, I would say. I think we're pretty much like Armin was saying, like a detail index. Oops, sorry. A detail index. I think that's a very nice to have, almost a must have. But yeah.
Especially if you are reading the book cover to cover.
Yeah, I can see that they're annoying to do, though.
Yeah, you need. I am usually on index duty I sometimes my entire job for a book is doing nothing but writing the index. It's a whole person's job, so it's
Yeah.
depending on how big the book is, right? So but I would say it's absolutely worth it. Keep paying me, keep my job. But no, really, it is. It's because it's very helpful. Once if you've read through the whole, even if you are somebody to read something cover to cover, you probably don't want to do that more than once or twice. You probably the second time you want to go, okay, I just need to know what to look for
What
here.
What do you think when you look at an index and then you look for a specific a specific rule or something? You're looking at a little like stealth, right? You want to see like, okay, how does stealth work? You go look in the index, and then it's say like 27, 250, 412. Like
That
that's a
tells
bad
me
sign.
that tells me the editor got lazy or the editor had a time crunch to deal with. Because that's not helpful, right? Somebody's gone to the index so that information, or the stealth, see rolling skills on page 27, or it's like, well, or just have on the same page skills. How do you roll a skill? Stealth rolled as other skills. Mechanic rolled as other skills. This, that can be a thing in there, but
if the only thing you see on page 27 is that stealth is a skill, right?
Yeah, that's not helpful.
Maybe in the index, you don't send me to that page, right? I mean,
yeah,
skill if you want to, like, just send me where there's the rules. It should be like one place.
Yeah.
If there's more than one entry in your index for one word, one keyword.
And
I think there should be like really good computer tools to auto-index a document. I haven't found one yet. It's not so simple, to be honest. It's because you need to know, you need to understand like what is relevant, what goes in the index, because you don't want, it's not like every appearance of the word that get indexed, right? And just like,
you effectively want to only include the technical nitty-gritty information in an index, but I've seen the reverse issue with Pathfinder 2nd edition where only certain information is included in what's effectively an index, where it's like all of the conditions are explained way at the end of the book. So you're building your character with like, oh, I can take this spell to inflict the stunned condition, but you don't explain what stunned does until the index. So I'm like, before I've even finished, making my character, I'm always flipping back and forth. And it's like, no, the index should be after you've explained it once. Here's a way to go back to it and reference everything very quick. I think if you don't have an index, you should at least have a cheat sheet, right? You should at least have, front cover, back cover, GM cheat sheet, player cheat sheet, that sort of thing,
I agree. Cheat sheet. Fuck, oh, great. Ornament say, even if the spell description is the same as the spell in another class or spell or feature or whatever, just repeat the description. I hate having to chase the text through the rules. I agree. And like repeat the description with the same fucking verbiage, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
Now there's two.
Not a tabletop game, but a card game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is infamous about this, where different errata or different printings of the card need errata because they use different verb tenses, or they use a when instead of an if, and it makes the effect totally different when it becomes an if instead of a when, or vice versa. And so it's more important
nowadays that you can write in section and just like make an include, so you can so if you change at one place, you're gonna change like don't write your document in if you're designing a game, don't write it in Google Doc or in Word, right? Just like there's better tool, like it's a technical stuff. You need a tool that is up for the challenge. Like I like ASCII Doc. It's kind of like a markdown language, and I can just like write my rules in its own document and then include it where I need it. And I can even like put variable, and if I want to change one word.
I wish I worked for you, because every editing firm I have worked for uses Word, and it is nightmarish. It's
not up for the job, right? We have better tools than that nowadays.
We really do, but that's part for the course for working for the government, is they're using 20-year outdated tech. Know what tools you're using. That's a really good one. If you're used to just typing stuff up in Google Docs, when you hit about 30 pages, you'll start to go,
like
God damn it, why did I start this in Google Docs? Because it will start to show you, hey, I'm really only made for like a few pages.
Yeah. Oh, what do I use instead of a Word? I use what I use now. It's a program that's called Code OSS. I'm on Linux, so I use Word stuff. But the protocol I use is called ASCII Doc, which it's a Markdown language, where you can just like you put like a equal sign, and then your text is gonna be a title. If you put two equal signs, it's gonna be like adding two, right? And then you can just edit like what those mean later on. So you don't have to think about formatting while you're editing, while you're writing, which is great. And you can put like variable name. So let's say I use a class. Let's say I have an assassin class and a thief that has the same kind of a feature. I can write the feature in its own block text, and then include it in the assassin class and in the thief class, and I can put like a variable name class name, right? And then I can just like change the value of class name before including so the text is gonna change. It's gonna correct itself.
In Magic the Gathering, this is called reminder text, and it's a really clever thing that the designers for that game did, where just in your little parentheses you have a reminder of what this keyword means, just in case you forgot. That way you're not having to call over a judge every 2 seconds and go, what does menace mean? I haven't seen fear in 20 years because they haven't printed that on a card in 20 years. Was it? No, it's right there in the parentheses, just in case. And that's a really good design philosophy. And
I'm a big fan of ASCII Doc. If you want to, it's there's a bit of a learning curve, but if you want to write a long document, it's worth to read it, to look at it, and then you can convert in PDF easily. And this website, if you look at the link I post on for Winter Down, the whole website is just like I just convert my ASCII Doc document on its own.
That's pretty funny. That's sort of outside the scope of this video, but I read instructions that were translated by someone that didn't understand using a wizard in Windows and instructed me to use the Windows fairy. That's another reason to maybe not use so much flavorful language if you're thinking about localizing it in different languages, because localization is way harder when you're using a bunch of fantasy terminology, right? Because you'll get things like the Windows fairy. I don't want to play the friggin' fairy class, man. What are you talking about?
No, I think the window wizard is
the
like
install
when
wizard.
you want to set up a.
I'm saying though, if that were a game though, and you translated your class from wizard to fairy, that would be maybe a turn off.
Yeah. There are different like software that use that use different more user friendly. I don't know. I like things that are simple and
And a good writing rule here that Arn Man mentions is words game in itself. Any document style change might change everything else in a document. Save your style as the last thing you do. Just get all of your content out there and then go back through and stylize all of it. Because if you're trying to get fancier than page breaks, you're gonna.
Also, like a word is not like a formatting. Then you need to go like to something else, like a affinity, whatever, something like that. If you want to do that's different process. But that's outside of the scope.
Exactly.
Is there anything you want to add, like about game, something like that game does that make learning the rules harder, or that makes learning the rules easier? Like, I think we covered pretty much a lot of ground here, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something I didn't already say, or one of us didn't already say.
Maybe just in finishing, we can give example of games that did a good job teaching the rules, and did a bad job teaching the rules. Let's start with the good one. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a shorter list. I think Mongoose Traveler does a pretty good job of teaching its rules, because it goes through character creation, and it basically tells you exactly when you need to roll, what you need to roll, and then you're sort of learning how to play the game through the character creation, because the character creation is part of the game. So that's kind of a unique example that shouts out at me. There was another one I mentioned to you before the stream that I cannot now remember in my head.
Hackmaster.
Hackmaster 5th edition, because they figured out the most obtuse way to teach a game in 4th edition on purpose. It feels like in doing so, they figured out a very good way to explain the game when they made an actual serious game in 5th edition. And, the tables are very good, very easy to skip around, and, everything's in order. So, you're not going, make a character here, flip back over here, flip back over here. It's just you go in a straight line while you're doing your character creation. Combat's all in one section. Those would be my 2 for that one. For good games.
Arman got a good point there.
Yeah.
Write rules like a legal document. If something is labeled as a particular word, keep using the same word to the rules when referring. Yeah, that's a good rules to follow as well.
If something's a keyword, italicize or bold it to let them know that
and don't keyword too much either.
Yeah.
Sometimes like some people go a bit heavy with the keywords. I'm like, it's just like part of the English language. You don't, it doesn't need to be a keyword.
I know what attack is. Yeah, I kind of get that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're making an attack. That doesn't need to be a keyword.
Yeah.
What about you? Good game. I think Forbidden Land did a good job to teaching its rule, because it keep it simple. It doesn't like over explain anything. It give example when you need to. It doesn't like give and it's a pretty light read, so you can just and the game is simple as it is, but it doesn't put the fluff too much inside the rules. I think this one did a good job for it. Now, bad one.
Let's
go with the worst. Yeah.
The worst. Oh boy.
Because there's so many bad ones. Everybody make mistake. Every games. Very few games are very well made.
I would say so. Yeah. I would say Shadowrun 6th edition, I think, holds a special place as the most terribly edited game I've ever seen from like a major company. Because one, you can point to a little indie game made by one person and go, oh, the editing kind of stuff. Well, they were editing it themselves, and they're not an editor. I'll cut them some slack for that. Shadowrun 5th edition was already lambasted for being terribly edited because it's terribly edited. But it's somehow even worse in 6th edition. Like
I think the interesting question too would be like, is it like is it a game that is hard to learn, but is there a good game in there? Because you can say like, a terrible game with terrible rules is always going to be like terrible to teach, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, there's a much easier way to explain what it should have been. What all Shadowrun 5th edition, and from what I've read of 6th edition, I didn't even read all the way through it because I was like, geez, they don't even credit an editor. That should tell you like how, which either means they were too embarrassed to put their name on the project, or they just did not hire an editor. Which I'm betting on the second one, because apparently they didn't pay like any of their artists either. They just sort of like ran away with the cash, and very bad look for a big company. There needs to be in those games somewhere, an easy task needs 3 hits, a medium task needs 5 hits. There's no contextualization of what's a good score to have. What am I trying to, how many points do I need to put in pistols to be competent with pistols? Everything's just numbers. Oh, I'm rolling 8 dice with pistols. I don't know if that's good. So I need to look at all the armor. Oh, well, the baseline armor takes away, 2 hits. Oh, okay. So I probably need to wait. Does it take away hits or does it take away dice? It takes away hits. Oh, okay. Then I go back over here, and you're constantly trying to like figure out the context of, is this number good or not? Whereas if you just had this is easy, this is medium, this is difficult. Okay, now I would understand, all right, that's probably a good number. That probably means I'm pretty good at pistols. That probably means I'm pretty good at running, what have you. And then everything's just scattered all over the place and filled with, the fluff in places where you're trying to, tons of deleted references where if there's an editing sin that we've mentioned in this stream, you can find it in Shadowrun 5th edition and 6th edition. It's yeah.
But do you think that if the book was cleaned up, like edited properly, the rules, like the same rules, but just like presented better, you think it'd be a decent game?
I like Shadowrun 5th edition. It's like one of probably my favorite cyberpunk system to play in. It's just when your game, I think it speaks to two parts. One, that there's a good game in there, and two, that it's way too poorly written. When there's a community that goes, you're making your first Shadowrun 5th edition character, download Chummer. Download the app to make the third party, fan-made app to make your character, because you will not you'll make a mess if you try to make the character by, Chummer. It's got, all the different stuff. It tells you what page the perk you're taking is on. It tells you what page the skills you're putting in are on. It's so well made. And if you start the game through that, you're like, why didn't they write what this should have been, they need to hire these dudes for the company, because this is
Or meant like two verbos will not get used on my table. It's like watching a 1 hour presentation. It could be explaining 3 slides. And it's like Mark Twain.
Things
apologize that I didn't have time to write a short little letter.
Like hacking is, it's not just hacking, it's decking. And it's like, because they use cyber decks and not computers. And it's like, well, hacking isn't called computering, so it doesn't even make sense as a language modification. This is just, and then you have to, in the middle of explaining how the hacking skill works, decking is called that because it's like you've already made a complicated subsystem, and nobody uses the way hacking works in 5th edition. It's people always use the way it worked in 4th edition. So there's little bits and pieces where it's just like, this didn't need to be a subsystem. There's a good system hidden in there, but man, is it hidden.
And also, like, to what I want to what Armin was saying, like, when I rewrite, I'm a big believer in rewriting stuff. Like, I rewrite my rules, right? The same thing, but I improve the language. So it's kind of like editing, but like, sometimes what you see is first draft, right? I always aim for shorter, and usually like I can take something like, make it half as long, just by better writing. When you put your first idea on the paper, sometimes it's going to be much more verbose than it needs to be, and then you just find like a better language. And there's some rules that I think I like this rule, but I need to find a better way to explain it, otherwise it's unusable. Sometimes it's just that if I cannot find the proper language, sometimes I just trash some rule because of that. Like, it works mechanically, but it's too complex to explain. So I've cut it. One game I would say that did an awful job at explaining the system is Paladin. I'm a big fan of Pendragon, right? And Paladin is the same rule set, but in the court of Charlemagne instead of Archer, which is the thing I prefer. I like better. And the game came after Pendragon existed already, but it did like such a worse job at explaining the system. Like, you have no excuse, right? You basically the same fucking game at this other one, but now you just like jumble up where the rules are located and maybe put them everywhere and stuff like that. Make no sense. It's like, that's so. And Pendragon is not the best either at explaining the rules, right? It's a bit messy in the rule. It's not too bad. It's a bit messy in the rule placement. Sometimes you have to look up stuff. Sometimes like something come much later than it should have. Like, it's relevant. Like, I should know this thing now, but you're only gonna explain it like 100 pages later. But and somehow Paladin had this fucking example to deal with, and it just made it fucking worse. So I don't know. Like, I would say like because I could name like a Burning Wheel or Witcher, but I think like, which I name already in this conversation. But I think like the problem there is just like, let's say like the way they explain the rule is not the first problem they should address. They should fix their rule first, right? So that's why I'm gonna call them out, but I'm gonna call Paladin because of that. Because I think like it's one of my favorite systems.
And there's there's part of that with like the Technomancer, I think, is the name of the sort of archetype or the like magic system in Shadowrun 5th edition, which was added after 4th edition. It's one of the new things.
Yeah.
It might be a great system. No one understands how it works. Like, it is legitimately, if you go through forums, people are like, oh, Technomancers are just banned unless the player who wants to play it can explain to me as the game runner how the hell it might be phenomenal, but like, you read the rules and you're like, I don't understand, because it uses like very nebulous language where it's like, okay, you create an avatar of yourself in the Matrix using magic rather than using technology. And there's no like numbers attributed to anything. There's no explanation. It's just like, I
Just
guess
like
that,
high level concept.
yeah, and it's like, I guess that means whatever that means. But yeah, Ardman says here, if your playtesters ask a question about a particular rule, go back and edit your rules to avoid that question. Too many times the rule gets explained, but the text stays the same. Yeah, and that feels like what a second go through, but in a new setting should be an opportunity for. It should also be an opportunity to put your errata in, and too many times games get printed for years and years and years. They're still getting printed, and there's errata online, but they don't put the errata in the book, or they, God, even worse. Last aside, Pathfinder is horrible about this. Their errata is all over the internet. It's on the Paizo forums. It's on, some other forums. It's on these forums. And you're like, well, wait a minute. The lead game designer, James Jacobs, said this, but the designer of this module or this particular supplement said this. So which,
I never check errata, right?
Yeah.
Like and that, like all those games I have and I play and stuff like that, they might have a errata for them and never fucking check them. Like for me, like if it's not in the book, it doesn't exist. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's,
it's not an habit that I have.
Yeah, and I have kind of come to the same conclusion of if I find stuff that makes me go, gee, I need to look to see if there's an errata that explains this. I go, well, no, that means I'm here to explain it now. Whatever my ruling is, that's how we're moving on. That's how we're going forward. That's my homebrew document. That's our errata document, for things that don't make any sense. Because half the time errata are like balance changes and sort of superfluous stuff, or they make a change that's actively detrimental to the game. That's
Anyway, I think we're gonna wrap it up for tonight.
Yep.
We didn't discuss what we're gonna talk next week.
No, we did not.
And I don't have an idea right on top of my head. Do you?
No, let's get something a bit more flavorful, because this might be the driest topic we talked about, despite how interesting I think it is.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, and I think we had a good talk. But it is certainly like dry, and certainly something that is more aimed toward like wannabe game designer, or maybe if you're a fucking company watching out there, you won't admit it, obviously. But let me know in the comment down below if you watch that and stuff.
Yes, they can get canceled on Twitter with our jet fuel and steel beams comments. Yeah.
Well, that's not gonna be the first time for me. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll talk offline about the topic, and we announce.
It'll be a surprise.
Yeah, it's gonna be a surprise next week. So come back next week. We'll have another topic. We don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I'm sure we're gonna find something interesting. Oh, there you go. Investigation, adventure method. That could be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Ultra investigation and rules we could use. Yeah, well, people seem to want to talk about investigation. We'll look into that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, okay. Let's do that then. So next week we're gonna talk about investigation, and that's gonna be interesting.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me, and thank you also, Bear, for dropping by, even though he wasn't feeling too well. He had a lot of interesting stuff to say. It's too bad he couldn't stay a little longer, but sometimes you have to know when to cut it out. And thank you, Tyler, for joining me. Thank you, everybody that joined us live and commented in chat, and thank you, everybody that watched on the replay. And we'll see you next week. Take
Yeah.
care.
See ya.